This is Talking Points Season 2, powered by the Planck Center.
We're your hosts, Tamarra Thal,
Zane Landon,
and Sonny Miller.
We'll be bringing you exclusive conversations with both emerging and seasoned professionals to talk about various topics associated with our Planck Center resource guides, which are free on the Planck Center website, by the way.
From tips for their younger selves to how they made big moves, you'll hear it all from the brightest minds in the field.
This season's theme is cracking the code to workplace confidence. In the upcoming episodes, we'll talk with some of the leaders of our field about how they sometimes struggled with that dreaded imposter syndrome, grew past self-doubt, and how even the best among us might still need a little bit of reassurance every now and again.
So join us every week as we shine a light on the new voices in our fields, learn from industry experts, and talk about the future we aim to build together.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of the Planck Center's podcast, Talking Points. We're your hosts, Sonny Miller and Tamarra Thal.
While commonly thought of as a state of mind, confidence is also muscle. The more you flex it, the more confident you become. Confidence is the gateway to advocating for and advancing your career, signaling that you're ready for the responsibilities and to climb the workplace ladder.
Today, we're speaking with Brian Price, Senior Advisor at DrivePath Advisors. Brian is also the co-founder and past chair of the Emerging Leaders Committee at the Planck Center. He was also the national president of PRSSA from 2013 to 2014. He's also a former mentor of mine, and I would consider him still a mentor, though not through a formal program anymore. Really excited to have you here, Brian.
Hey, and thanks for welcoming me to the conversation. I'm excited to be here, and I think as we kind of go along today, and we'll have a conversation which I hope is relevant, but I'll be counting on the two of you to keep me in check to make sure that we're having the right conversation we want to have about workplace confidence. I think it's a really exciting topic. I've got some past experiences that I can draw on, some little stories here and there, but I'm looking forward to the two of you keeping me on the rails too, right?
Awesome. Exactly. Well, let's just jump into it. So to kick things off, could you walk us through your career and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Most of my career has been in in-house positions, but I started out of school at Edelman as an assistant account executive. And to show you how a career can evolve, I'll mention that for more than my first year of work, my only client was Slim Jim, and my only remit was social media. And then fast forward 10 years later, at the start of 2024, I went back into an agency role after 8 years in-house at a boutique communications agency that focuses on corporate communication and IR for the energy sector and the transition to a new, better, cleaner energy world. So that's a big change over 8-9 years from Slim Jim, CPG, Facebook, Instagram to energy transition. But I'll tell you, I didn't trick DrivePath Advisors, my firm, into hiring me. Well, at least, not in terms of having relevant experience. I left Edelman and I went and worked for Starwood Capital Group. That's private equity and focused on real estate. And I was embedded in their retail operation. And I think we've got a future question lined up where I can tell a story. But by the time that job had started to plateau for me and I was looking elsewhere to work, I was qualified to do corporate communications at an insurance company. So I went and did corporate comms there for a while. I was really happy, enjoyed that role a ton, but took a risk in my career and left that job after a few years, returned to private equity with Blackstone, where through there I was embedded in their portfolio company that uses a warehouse portfolio to raise capital for investors. That was a good run, but I was something I saw to be more of a short-term play in my career, and that's when I started having these really exciting conversations with my current firm, DrivePath. Exciting place at the right time where this agency of ex in-house comms leaders building the agency we always wish we could have hired. So I guess why am I here? How did I get here? If you're scoring at home and we want to keep this conversation on the rails about workplace confidence, I can frame up that journey for you in probably the most exciting way and the least exciting way possible. So the most boring way I could present this career would be I was running Facebook pages. Then I worked on regional shopping malls, then insurance, then warehouses, and now energy. You're okay, that's
cool.
Something or another. Always corporate, always comms, which is what, that's good, but that's Okay. But another way to look at it is, I started my career at the world's largest PR firm and on $1 million account. Then I went to a famous private equity group in Starwood where I grew into corporate communications. I spent some time in risk management that underpins the global economy and worked for Blackstone. Now I'm focused on one of the greatest risks and opportunities in our lifetime in addressing energy production and consumption in a world right now that's rapidly warming. So that puts me at the forefront of some really exciting things. Um,
I love the
I'll
way
let
you
you guys
frame
jump in
that
here,
up.
but I'd say like to frame that up in how it relates to confidence. Not everybody has a job where immediately and obviously you understand, wow, that person's doing amazing, cool things. And keeping your focus there on what is great about your job and what's rewarding and what's valuable now, what's going to be valuable experience later, I think is a huge part of the conversation we're having.
Yeah. I know you and I have spoken before about that, maybe taking the non-traditional path and whatever that might mean to you, but it's always, it's hard on your confidence, especially when you watch your peers do things that, a path that is more traditional and is maybe a little bit flashier. And I too have taken maybe a little bit of a non-traditional path and have definitely felt those moments of like, oh, well, we aren't applying for a bunch of like PR week awards. That like our work just doesn't really lend itself to that, or we're for whatever reason strategically not interested in that kind of thing. And so you look at your peers and you're like, oh well, am I less exciting than them? Is my career less fulfilling? But at the end of the day, it's about knowing yourself and knowing what you actually enjoy and what you're looking for. I also love that you framed it up as the least cool way to tell the story and the most cool way, really showing your PR backbone there, Brian.
Maybe.
So throughout your career, you've navigated diverse fields, from agency work to retail, insurance, logistics, everything that you just described. Have you ever encountered a moment in these experiences where you identified a gap, whether in a project or during the hiring process for a new role, and knew you had the skills to bridge it? Like, how did you approach that conversation when maybe you didn't necessarily feel, like it was maybe in your job title to be approaching this thing, but you knew you could do it?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely had that somewhat early on in my career, although, it's going to be different for everyone. Here's my experience. It's my first in-house job. I got hired as a digital marketing manager at Starwood. And the job was to run their B2C digital channels because they wanted me to do it. They liked that I could do it because my Edelman experience was so focused on social media and really consumer packaged goods. And they felt like that's an easy translate. I could bring a lot of value to the role. So they hired me. And that's how I got in the door. But I knew I was also, trained from school and from PRSSA through other like summer internship experiences about traditional PR too. So to me, a big part about confidence is balancing this idea of like patience and proactivity. I was patient and then I knew I was hired to do a really specific job. Like I've got my job and I've got to demonstrate time and time again that I'm good at this. At work, I don't think you make first impressions in a day, a month. It's months and months is that first impression is being created. So I spent like a good, I don't know what it exactly was, so say like probably 9, maybe even close to 12 months trying to just demonstrate every day that I could do the job that I was given really well. That was patience. But you're talking about being proactive on top of that. And being proactive was not waiting too long before I was starting to have it like putting the bug in the ear of our team lead. I can do corporate communications too. But I was also waiting for me to understand the organization and the environment that I'm operating in to like really present that as an opportunity for the team lead too. Like once I got to know our environment really well, I was able to say to this team lead, I can do corporate communications. A lot of that work falls on you because it's a small part compared to our consumer facing work. But if we start working on this together, I can really lighten your load here. And that was received really well. And it wasn't really too long after that we changed my title from digital marketing manager to communications manager because I was layering in more and more of that work because that was a white space that was filled by someone with a VP title who was overqualified to do it and had other priorities. So that was my lane to broaden my work and find out, and then figure out how to present it as something that's going to be a value add to everybody.
I
And I love
love
that you got to use a bit of like managing up in that, you're like, let me take that off your plate. I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I especially love your part about patience, because I know, especially for us younger professionals, sometimes we want to rush the process. And I'm guilty of this. I find myself doing this a lot. And just to put this in perspective of like, I'm a dancer, right? And they always tell us, don't try to rush it because you miss the foundations. And similarly to PR, in any workplace environment, if you're just rushing it and you're like asking your manager for promotion when you might not even have the foundational skills to get there and you're not proactive enough and you don't have those skills, the building blocks, you're discounting yourself and missing some of these key skills. So I just love that like those two that you added in there. I think that's a great advice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you want to be able to succeed in the tasks that you're given. Now, that doesn't mean that you have
Hmm.
to do it by yourself all the time and like they
Right.
hand it to you. You've never done this before, but everything you've done suggests that you can. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you're like go on an island, do it great the first time, forever and always. But you should feel confident that you not just want it, but can do it and make that gap. I mean, every time you do something for the first time, it happens all the time, and it continues to happen all the time. That I'm doing something for the first time. A lot of times, it's just a one-time thing that you do and you figure it out. A bunch of other times, it's the first of many.
Hmm.
Um, but I always look at it as, like trying to do more corporate communication work and elbowing my way in. Like that was me getting what I wanted, getting what's best for my career. So I was taking
Hmm.
initiative, but at the same time, like waiting and making sure that I had established myself, that I'd earned trust,
Hmm. Hmm.
finding a way to get what I wanted that was beneficial to the boss, to the SVP, that I could point to. Like, I understand this company, what we're doing, where we're going. Here's how me doing more of that work fits into the general direction. It's not just like, hey, this guy wants to try something new. I mean, maybe we can let him play over here for a little bit and see how it goes.
Right. Busy work or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and like, so I think to take that a step back, even like my thing at Starwood was I didn't go there to work on shopping malls. Like that's what we own, shopping malls, regional shopping malls. That's fine. It's not inherently boring or anything, but I wasn't wanting to work there because I love regional shopping malls so much. I was thinking about B2C work is what I've been doing. I think that there's this other passion out there for me more on the B2B side. Um, but I went to Starwood to do that work that I elbowed my way into. Like that was something that was appealing about it. I didn't want people from my comms network or in the next job interview I'd have someday down the line to be like, Brian's job is to get more people to spend more money at shopping malls, and they use communications to do it. Like, okay, yeah, kind of. Like I wanted that future interviewer or people that I respect in my network to better kind of understand like the job I have here is working with a famous private equity firm in Starwood. I'm learning about REIT companies like real estate investment trust, like a REIT company, and focusing on helping them communicate appropriately to B2B partners, to investors, and to consumers. Like that's an exciting job. And kind of like we said off the top, I don't need everybody to know how cool my job is. Um, what you really need is to have that confidence in yourself that
Hmm.
that I'm getting valuable experience here.
I love that, Brian. And also going back to your career, so you've taken an unconventional path in PR, which can sometimes challenge traditional expectations. How has confidence influenced your ability to market yourself and your career choices?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like unconventional in form, although not necessarily that way in function. Like for me, it's always been a comms career, but it can seem chunky and disjointed if you see like did this job, did that job, whatever, that focus here, focus there. But the way that I tell it when it matters most, I'm making this really clear path that feels like an obvious, smooth, rounded transition into like where I've been, where I'm going, how each was a step in the ladder of where I wanted to be. it's not about, believing your own version of events or inventing your own truth, but it is about focusing on the best parts, having a great way to introduce yourself that highlights where you've been and what you're doing now. That's why I think introductions are so important. That's creating a much more dynamic situation to let somebody know what's important when it's important to do that. Some people work at a big firm and they might work on the Gatorade account and cross paths with NFL or NBA players. Some people could work on a whiskey account and do activations in Nashville with whatever level of country music star the budget allows for this year. That's awesome. That is so cool. I, on the other hand, work at a boutique communications firm for corporate comms and IR that's focused on energy transition. I love it. We're doing big time work on big time issues, helping our clients navigate these transformational moments in their business. That's enough for me to be excited. I mean, it's more than enough. It's fantastic and exciting work. When it's important, I want to have a nice way for people to see that.
And I think for a lot of comms people and the students listening or young professionals listening, it really just comes back to storytelling, just like they taught us in school, right? It's all about how you tell that story in a way that's going to make the most sense to the audience that you're speaking to. So if you're in an interview and you are really excited about this role that you're interviewing for, you're going to highlight the pieces of your previous role that make it a clear path and a clear choice as to why you're the best candidate. But I think at the end of the day, part of what makes you more confident as a professional is having a strong understanding of what it took to get here and your story as a professional and what the story of your career is. It's not just a series of disjointed events. Like you said, it's all been building, and being able to pick out those building blocks that made you who you are today helps to build that confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Like that is, I think to me, it's essential in the type of confidence that you have. And that confidence, when you can introduce yourself to a new colleague, like if you're working in-house, a new colleague who doesn't understand the value of communications inherently, maybe they just haven't worked with a comms function a lot, or you're an agency, it's a new client. It's like, why did you get tossed onto this account? Like, be able to explain that, get off on the right foot, have other people feel like I get why they put this person here.
Yeah.
Is huge.
We're lucky to have them.
In the same way.
Great.
Yeah. In the same way that when I do media training, we, especially with like a subject matter expert, and we're going to go doing the type of interview that two subject matter experts are talking to one another. It's not my job to help this subject matter expert talk about the details of their profession. It's my job to help them get off on the right foot, have confidence, and be able to stay out of the weeds and keep the conversation moving.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've done a lot of like helping others build confidence in their careers. I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself. So how has your definition of confidence changed over the years, Brian?
Well, it's definitely changed. I think at first it was like confidence in my very specific tasks, not making mistakes. I'll bring this around quickly to topic, but put this in school terms. When I first started out of school, I was the type of student that like an A- is certainly good enough for me, right? Like I'm happy with that. Well, I learned pretty quickly that in the workplace, your boss, your team leaders, colleagues that you work with, getting a 94% on the assignment is not good anymore. Like they expect 100s, and you can throw in a couple of 99s here. And I kind of learned that the hard way. Luckily, really, really early, somebody pulled me aside and told me, not using that analogy, it's one I like to use now, but like, got to get straight A's in this type of job. Okay. So now from a confidence perspective, I don't know, did I take a half step, quarter step back? But it's like where everybody starts is you need to build this confidence through tactical excellence. When you're making mistakes, you're second guessing yourself, your work, you're doing things slower because you're quadruple checking everything. as you start to get things right more and more often, working those muscles like we talked about, and confidence comes with that. And that's just like, can't be over. I overlooked that early. I was looking on step 3 and tripped over step 1 in terms of like what I want to be in my career. Because the first things first, you got to do the little things well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it really started for me, is where confidence comes from, is that I can do 15 small assignments well every single day. But later on, like as an in-house professional, you're a business partner using your communications experience. That's what they expect from you. You don't want to be this, what a former manager who I really appreciate called deli counter PR. Someone from the business comes up and says, we're doing this. We want a press release. You know, your job isn't to like wrap up that press release like a sandwich and send it out. Your job is to ask, why do you think you want that? Probably not in those exact words, but you know, why do they think they want that? What's the right channel to use? And what are we doing? You have to have confidence in your expertise that you can have that conversation. Or I'll tell you another story about like a really difficult assignment I was given. I was at Axis Insurance. I was somewhat new, but not brand new. And they're like, okay, we need to do a thought leadership, like 1-page article, and should have this call with the head of insurance-linked securities, listen to their thoughts about the market conditions, and ghostwrite the thing. So we have the call. I got a million notes because I don't know, and still don't know anything about ILS, what they call it. Apparently other people do. And I'm looking at my notes and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know what any of these words mean or do. So at this time I had a conversation with a colleague that I trusted about like, how do I close this gap? And they reminded me like of the confidence that now I would have in this situation through experience, which is to say, I know storytelling. I'm going to put this together. Yeah. I am not an expert on insurance-linked securities. Nobody's asking me to. We have that guy. I'm going to put together a good intro, a good conclusion, the 3 important points in the middle, and the first draft is going to be written. But I'm putting the expert in a position to say, this is a really good story. That's not true. We need to fix this. But now we're like getting into the weeds, deep into the tactics. Like that person doesn't have the experience that I have in crafting a good story. So I have to rely on that. I have to be confident, put that first draft forward, and know that as a writer, your work's always going to get edited. Nobody looks at, even if I am writing on a topic that I know a lot about, no one's just going to look at it and say, wow, I can't think of anything to change. When I'm writing what I don't know about, I need to put together a first draft that people who don't know storytelling as well as I do, but have subject matter expertise, how can we get on equal footing and work together?
That's such a good point. And it sounds like, even from what you're saying and from my experience, the best and most confident people around me have always been the best team players, just because like it's not only knowing what you do well, but knowing your gaps and where others can fill in. So it's being sure of what you provide and being very good at that, but then pulling others in who also are very good at what they do, so you all can collaborate effectively. So I love that.
Yeah. Like think about, we're all in the business. This isn't like just because someone's directly revenue generating and you may not be, doesn't mean that we're not business partners together. So What's your value? Knowing that, having confidence that you can deliver in that, and then projecting that, not in a way that's undue of what your value is, but to say, this person who's going to be the face of whatever I'm supporting is going to be better because I worked on this.
Yeah. And I think one other kind of theme that stood out to me a lot in what you were just saying was you have to have a thick skin in this business. Someone pulled you aside early on and said, hey, your good isn't good enough and you need to be doing better. You need to be delivering A+ every single time. And, especially when you're early in your career, it can be really hard to bounce back from feedback like that. Especially, it sounds like you might not have had this exact affliction at that point in your career, but I personally struggle with perfectionism, and things like that would have that would have been a really hard pill for me to swallow.
It's a lot easier looking back on it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that was a tough thing to hear, but it's something that I needed to understand.
Yeah. And I
Maybe other
think,
people know that right away. It seems like it, because not everyone
yeah,
has to have that conversation. But
Mhm.
we're all different.
you know,
But I think
you don't
that
know what you
like
don't know.
exactly. And I think that, that theme of kind of developing thick skin, you said like we're all writers, we're all always going to be edited. That's something that you have to kind of build throughout your career. And I was kind of thinking like, ugh, that is something that looking back, like if I could tell myself something, it would be like toughen up, like thicken your skin. They're not like it's not personal. Um, and so, what do you think if you were looking back on maybe PRSSA President Brian, student Brian? What advice would you give?
You know, that's a good point. And I really agree with what you're saying. For me to go back, or really for anyone, about I think I kind of tie it back to like demonstrating professionalism at all times. Not to say that people struggle with that, because I think inherently most people can do a passable job on that, just with like leaning on common sense and you know the golden rule. But excelling there is really important. So like that's, for instance, like being aware of your nonverbals. So when you're at a meeting, if it's not the most fascinating thing, at least pretend like it is. Like pretend it's the most important meeting you've ever heard. Always. Like that's a good one. So you're right. That means like you're engaged, you're writing things down. Like people are paying you money to be there. You got invited to the session. Presumably somebody believes that you're supposed to be adding value either during the meeting or directly after because of what you heard. So yeah, the idea is to like always act like it. Taking good notes, writing stuff down. Not only is it like it looks great, it might just for the sheer ability to help you remember because you wrote it down, even if you're not going to really, really need it later. Like acting the part is really important and develops great habits. I also think like other advice I would give, to myself, especially would be to manage perceptions about your job, kind of like what we talked about before. Like when you introduce yourself, you're given an opportunity to give it basically an elevator speech about the value. Just like how we say customize a resume, like the most like standard advice, customize a resume for every job you apply to. Well, you don't write a new one every job you apply to. You tweak your own resume. It's like having your like stump speech introduction and being able to tweak it for who's your key audience. That's like comms 101. So applying that to yourself, I think is really important. There was one other thing I was just thinking about. I guess I would say, I went from PRSSA president, which is a little bit unique, but in other ways, not as much, because I just had this like really exciting PRSSA experience. A lot of like chapter leaders have that too, or people who led big projects in school or internships. Okay, so you did something cool in school that helped you get hired. For me, I was, assistant account executive, Edelman, big account. A series of moves since then that are not nearly as high profile, like mid-sized companies, insurance, logistics, boutique firm. On the one hand, got to know, like, who cares? I care. Other people don't need to. But on the other hand, like, to keep your confidence high, my tip for that is, like, to kind of summarize what we've been talking about, just focus on what's making you better, work hard at every opportunity, and keep the focus on the practice and repetition that you're building, and you're getting better and better in your career. If that's where your focus is, it's going to allow you to succeed no matter what type of environment you're in, and people are going to recognize that.
Hard work. People always do recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
in
think
the
so.
end.
In the end.
So, okay. Now it's time for our rapid fire questions, Brian. So we're looking for short and quick answers here, okay?
Really short.
You ready? Sure. Really short, really quick, rapid fire. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh, see, and why?
But still rapid fire.
Yeah, okay, anyways, we're not being rapid. Jimmy Buffett. He's my favorite famous person since like 9th grade. He was a wonderful writer, and behind the scenes, like people who paid attention know that he was really dedicated to his craft, not not always the persona he put out there. So I think that that's obvious answer for me.
That's a fair answer. What's the most unusual talent you have?
I don't know if it's a talent, but I can name the host site of every Summer Olympics if you needed me
Okay,
to.
go.
No,
Just
that's
kidding,
not
just
rapid
kidding,
fire.
just
So
kidding.
we're breaking the code.
Just
We'll take
kidding.
your word for it because you've built such strong trust with us.
Yeah, that's right.
If you could learn any skill just at the snap of your fingers, what would it be?
Investor relations.
Same.
Honestly, same too. What's the weirdest food combination you've ever tried?
Okay, I was thinking about this, and a long time ago, I was in Washington D.C. for work, and I had a calf's heart salad, which was odd and delicious.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad it delivered. If you
Yeah.
could live in any fictional universe, where would you choose?
So here's the thing. I don't really read or consume a lot of like that type of fiction. So for this, I'm just going to go with the setting from a book that I like called Don't Stop the Carnival, which is a fictional Caribbean island resort thing for like some like burnt out 60s New York publicity man. So you can just drop me right there at the resort and I'll soak up the trade winds.
I love that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Now we kind of just said it, but do great work. The rest you can't control. So do great work, come what may.
Awesome. If you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Anybody who's on vacation today, like, that's good enough for me. I don't need to be
Anywhere,
picky.
any vacation.
Yeah, somebody who's on vacation. If we do a swap, I'd do it.
And then last one, do you have a go-to karaoke song?
No, I'm a terrible singer. So that's never going to happen. Although, speaking of the calf's heart salad, that same trip, I saw somebody bring the house down at a karaoke bar later that night, singing "Killing Me Softly" by Lauryn Hill, and I was like, we were blown away. So that was pretty cool. So I'll give you that instead. Although, if I could sing, maybe it'd be like a Guy Clark song, like Dublin Blues.
Maybe that's a skill you should actually try and learn at the snap of your fingers, as opposed
No,
to
to be a great singer.
feel like
Yeah,
you've
then,
already
then
done a lot of
I wouldn't be
industrial
talking to you. I'd
experience.
be famous, like too famous, right? Like, I don't know, maybe not.
Awesome. As we close out, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. I can kind of like summarize, I guess, what we've been saying. So at the end of the day, like, here's the thing. When you're in this field, you're a counselor. Whether you're agency or in-house PR, people you work with see you as someone who gives them advice on an area of business where they don't have the level of expertise you do. Message delivery, storytelling, crafting a message. They can't see you as unqualified. That's something that you work with on the side with a mentor, with a coach, with a trusted friend. You improve yourself behind the scenes. So when you show up at the meeting, when you show up in someone's doorway, you're able to project confidence, and behind the scenes, you're growing as a professional.
That is spectacular advice.
Yeah.
I've heard you say before.
I don't think you want to throw out like, I've seen people do it where you kind of like throw out to be relatable that like, yeah, I'm still working on this too. Or yeah, I'm new here. Like I'll figure it out eventually. Like,
You're discounting
we
yourself.
don't usually have that luxury. I mean, when you're on agency side as a client, you don't have that luxury. When you're working with comms, when you're in comms, you're working with professionals who don't necessarily inherently understand our value. You don't really have that luxury. So like, that's why you always want to be, giving it all you got to prepare. When you do great at the level you're in, it does prepare you for something different, the level above. It gives you confidence to know that I can go up a level. I can do the same thing I'm doing today with the head of a business line that I could do for an executive level person later. I'm getting my reps in now. I'm practicing with someone who is at my peer level in a different sector. I can do that with a team lead later, that kind of thing. When you do that, you have confidence in your path. You own your storyline. Everything you want about your past starts to like fit into where you're going. And that creates, to me, workplace confidence. So that's what it's all about. And when you have
Awesome.
confidence, to tie it all the way back, like when you have confidence, you're able to I think do better work. You're able to be a better partner, and work is easier. It's not necessarily easy, but it should be easier, right? And that's what we want.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. That's everything that we had for you today. We appreciate you sharing your journey and your perspective. For our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Talking Points.
Talking Points is powered by the Planck Center for Leadership and Public Relations. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch the video series on YouTube. You can follow the Planck Center on Instagram or LinkedIn at Planck Center PR for more content. Thanks for listening.